Okay, everybody, it's time to read another children's book. And since I got a lot of viewers for Annie and Simon, I found another Annie and Simon book that has 4 stories in it. And the one I'm going to read is Living Things. So here is what the front cover looks. Annie and Simon. The Sneeze and Other Stories. There it goes. Annie and Simon. Turned out to be a really good story. And if enough people watch it, then I may read another story from Annie and Simon. There's 3 other stories in this book here. So let's get started with the story Annie and Simon. Living Things. I wonder what that could be about. Living Things. Here we go. Okay. There is another picture from the front as I go to the first story of the book, Living Things. So here we go. Living Things. There we go. Looks to me like I better do the camera a little bit. There. Okay, Living Things. Chapter 1. Here we go. One clear morning, Annie and Simon and Hazel, the dog, sat on the dock at Pickerel Lake. Annie's big brother, Simon, looked through his binoculars. What are you looking for? Asked Annie. Anything, said Simon. Any living thing. Want to have a look? No, thanks, Simon. I have to make pictures. Annie patted her paper. I know what, she said. Whenever you find a living thing, I'll make its picture. Okay, said Simon. He picked up his binoculars and looked up and down Pickerel Lake. Hey, 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 said Annie. I saw a splash. Where? Asked Simon. Right in front of us, said Annie. Simon put down his binoculars. I bet it was fish, he said. I bet it was a frog, said Annie. I like drawing frogs. Annie picked up her crayon and scribbled a bit. Simon looked at Annie's picture. That's pretty froggy, said Simon, but I think you need bends where the knees are. Annie stopped scribbling. Knees? Frog with knees? Oh, Simon. Tee-hee, 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 tee-hee. Good grief, said Simon. Annie put down her crayon. Simon, we're going to help you look for living things. Come on, Hazel. Annie and Hazel waded into the shallow water at the edge of Pickerel Lake. Annie stuck out her head underwater and looked around. Then she popped back up. Simon, Simon, I saw a little crayfish. "A crayfish," said Simon. "That's a living thing." Annie ducked underwater again. Then she came up. "There's a clam too, Simon." "I'm coming in," said Simon. "I'm coming out," said Annie. "I need to make pictures." So Simon went into the water, a pickerel lake. Simon waded in. He peered at the clam and the crayfish. "Good work, Annie," he said. "And look," said Annie, "a dragonfly too." Simon looked. "Oh, neat," he said. "Oh, neat." Yes. "The dragonfly," said Simon. "That's nice, Annie." "It's the crayfish, Simon." "Know what?" said Simon. "When a crayfish loses a claw fighting, a new one grows back in its place." "Eek!" said Annie. "That's strange." Annie held up her next picture. "A stone?" said Simon. "That's good too." "It's the clam," said Annie. "Guess what?" said Simon. "It takes a clam 1 hour to travel this far." He held up his hands. "Wow," said Annie. "That's slow." Simon looked at Annie's last picture. "That must be the dragonfly," he said. "That's what it is," said Annie. "Here's something," said Simon. "A dragonfly can eat 50 mosquitoes in 5 minutes." Annie put down her pictures. "Simon," she said, "do you know everything." "Well," said Simon, "I hate to brag." Annie picked up her frog picture. "Maybe I will put bins where the knees are," she said. Annie scribbled a bit on her paper. Simon and Hazel had a look. "That's froggier," said Simon. "Definitely." Annie laid her pictures out on the dock. "We've seen 4 whole living things, Simon." "Pretty good," said Simon. "But hold still, Annie. I think I see a couple more." Simon picked up a crayon and paper. Annie held still. "Where are they, Simon? Are they bugs? Are they on me?" Simon scribbled a little bit. Then Annie and Hazel had a look. "Tee-hee," said Annie. "Tee-hee." Simon found 2 more living things that he drew and colored. It was Annie and Hazel, but I don't think you can see the picture too good that Simon drew of his sister Annie and Hazel the dog. See how small that picture is? So I drew it in a king-size picture. I just drew it bigger, but it's the same way that Simon drew it. And here it is. Here's the picture of a bigger enlargement of Simon when he drew his sister and the dog Hazel. 2 more living things. And here's the picture, what it looks like. that Simon drew of his sister. Here it goes. And of course, there is Hazel. Unfortunately, it's a bit small, but it is bigger, a lot bigger than the book. Well, maybe you can see Hazel now. Okay, and there is Annie. That's what it looked like when Simon drew it, but it was a lot smaller. Now, Annie drew some frogs, but she didn't give them knees, didn't have them bending. Their legs was straight. So I drew two frogs who were bending their knees. So here it is, frogs with bend the knees, bend the knees. Here we go. Here's two frogs with bended knee. There it is. I hope you can see this. The top frog, the bottom frog, and they both got bent knees. And above it, I drew like a little desert and a little desert tree. And that's it. That's it for Annie and Simon. Living things. Living things. Once again, the picture that Simon drew of his sister and the dog Hazel. Okay, that's it. If I get a lot of clicks, I'll read another Simon and Annie story. But before I go, I just would like to say I'll show you, which may very well be the next book that I'm going to write. So just bear with me one moment as I bend the knees to get up and to get moving. And you just have to excuse me. Here we go. Here we go. Huh. Here we go. Now let me see. And one moment, please. Okay. It has to be adjusted for sure. Okay. That's it. I'll show you the next book that I will probably read. It's a great book too. I will give you a sneak preview. It's called The Wonderful School. Preview of perhaps next time that I read. Here it is. The Wonderful School. I need to adjust the light here. There it is. The Wonderful School. Okay. And I will read the beginning to give you an idea of what this is. A great book called The Wonderful School, about a teacher in school. She is an unusually nice teacher, and her name is Miss Tilly O'Toole. And there is The Wonderful School, if you can see it. Yeah. But I'll read it real quick. There it is. The Wonderful School. Yes, okay. So Tilly O'Toole is a teacher. And she's a teacher of these children. There once was a very unusual school that had for its teacher Miss Tilly O'Toole. And I'll try to enlarge it a little. This will be it. She taught all her lessons in riddle and rhyme. And those who learned quickest were given a dime. Gee, thank you, Miss Tilly O'Toole. Well, thank you, my dear. You learn pretty quick, so you get yourself a dime. So that's it for the previews of a wonderful, wonderful school. And a teacher named Miss Tilly O'Toole. She taught her lessons in riddle and rhyme, and those who learned quickest were given a dime. Well, that's it. I don't even know if you saw it, but at least you heard it. Bye-bye. See you later. Simon and Andy. Simon, Simon, Simon and Andy. What next adventure will they be in? We might see. And don't forget the wonderful school with Miss Tilly O'Toole. That's it. Hope you liked the video. Goodbye, sweet chariot. Mama gonna take you home. Swing low, sweet happy Easter chariot. Mama's gonna carry you home.